Welcome to Lesson 2, Introduction to Python Programming. Now that you've taken a look at the Before You Begin lesson to get your software set up, and Lesson 1 in which I presented the test drives of the IPython interpreter and the Jupyter Notebook, we can jump into Python programming itself. In this lesson, we'll take our first look at Python statements and a full Python script. Python statements, of course, are individual lines of code that perform a task, and scripts are groups of statements that perform typically a larger task, a full-blown Python application, if you will. We'll demonstrate how to define variables, and for those of you who are coming from other programming languages, Python is a scripting language, and though there are types for each variable that you create, you don't actually declare what those types are when you define the variable. We'll talk about some of the built-in data types that are part of Python, and we'll be talking about a number of those over the next several lessons. We'll rehash the arithmetic operators that I started presenting in the test drives, and we'll also take a look at the comparison operators in Python. You'll see that there are actually several different types of strings in Python. You can use single quotes around a string, double quotes around a string, and triple quoted strings as well. So we'll demonstrate each of those and talk about why you would use each. We'll demonstrate a couple of different built-in functions, including print, which simply displays whatever you give it as an argument in a text or character-based representation at the command line. We'll also talk about the built-in function input. If you're working in a command line application and you want to obtain input from the user or data from the user, you can use the input function to do that. By the way, as we work with interactive IPython, we won't need a whole lot of input and print statements because we can simply define variables that contain the values that we need to manipulate. We'll also demonstrate converting text to integer values with another one of the built-in functions called int, which also happens to be one of the built-in data types, the integer data type. And we'll talk about the if statement for making a decision in a program. We'll introduce it here and then talk about it in more detail in the next lesson. We'll also talk about the fact that everything in Python is an object, and that means that you can, I'll say, quote-unquote, talk to those objects and tell them to do things. We'll also demonstrate a little bit of Python's dynamic typing, and as part of that we'll introduce the built-in function type, which can tell you for any given value or variable name what the type of the object is that you're manipulating.